Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Kensei, your host for Catharsis 2022. It's with fear and trembling I accepted the invitation to take over from Elijah, who created this event years back. Perhaps the trembling is somewhat literal as well. But it's really good to see so many of you here with us today. I had received 60 submissions for Catharsis. And I was told that this is actually higher than past years. I enjoyed reading most, if not all, of the entries, and I hope that this curated set of 13 poems will speak to you and tug at your heartstrings. Yeah. So now, in a sad way, we can't really talk about catharsis without prior sorrow or pain. I know I'm not actually in the lineup of poets, but I would like to read to you a poem that I wrote for a dear colleague of mine who passed away earlier this year. Writing it was catharsis for myself in itself because I was quite affected by her death. And Mrs. Eunice Toh had been this beacon of positivity in my school for as long as I can remember. She was my breakfast kaki, and in all honesty, with so much we had talked about every day, I think I'm perhaps closer to her than some of my actual aunts. So this tribute in remembrance is a bit sciencey sounding because she's a physics teacher. The poem is titled In Remembrance. You can call her a ray of sunshine piercing through a great sky, and it would still be an understatement. She clearly hit photons in beams of joy radiating from her smiles, never changing through the years, except with additional lines on her face. The entire nucleus of her being must have been protons with all that positivity, while she remained so highly charged while she lived. Now, she is in a better place, but as if heaven needed any more light. With that, I would like to hand over the time to our first poet to take the stage, Vivienne. Yeah. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So I'll read for you the bio. Vivienne is an avid bookworm and enjoys a wide variety of books. She first fell in love with poetry at age 11 through J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and started writing at 15. You can always find her huddled up with a good book at the nearest library or in the comfort of her home. Besides books, she is fascinated by human biology and harbors a minor obsession with chocolate. Vivienne, please go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. So my poem is titled Homeward Pilgrimage. Aaliya, walking out in the blazing 3 p.m. glare. The road and all her trees are alight. Too bright to be glowing, burning more like. My eyes water, so I look to my left as I pass under the shelter of shop fronts. The chip shop empty, the bar closed. But tuition goers pass me by. Toward the MRT station, life does not stop. Later, homeward bound at 7 p.m. The sun dancing on the hips of the horizon, back from whence I came. A full bar, I expect, old men and beers out front. But it is young women, I hazard the early 30s, sitting in pairs at tables, drinking tall glasses of liquid amber. One old, balding man in the corner with a full pint. The chip shop is all little tables crammed with people, families in prams lining the glass, the metal counterfront adorned with battered unidentifiables. Glowing blue light behind the chalkboard, today's specials, the usual, chicken and chips. Odd choice for a place that sells fish, though really. Beyond the rows of shops, people walk their dogs and their small children in the gently dying sunlight. The trees glow now with leaves green, translucent. I follow the endless stream of office workers, climbing like ants, crawling toward a distant anthill, only that I can stop to admire the gray-blue skies, rapidly turning orange, and good weather, and try to forget the long day past, the dull ache of anxiety drilling a hole in the back of my head. When I get home, I shall do everything slowly. Life does not stop, but sometimes I want it to. Life does not stop, so I slow time. I take a walk.
Hey, Thank you for the lovely poem. I chose Vivienne's poem to start off the lineup because I like the peace and the seemingly mundane slice of life feel of the poem, and I can see vividly the catharsis you experienced. I have a question for you though. Where do you get the inspiration for this? Is it a real place that you are describing?
Yes, it's a real place. There's actually a chip shop and a bar, and there's even an NTUC, and there's other shops I didn't mention, like a pizzeria and Subway. And it's actually a section of shops that I walk by on my way home. So as I was walking past, I actually thought of the first couple of lines for the poem. And it was around dinner time, so the light was really pretty, and I wanted to kind of write about that as well. I was actually feeling very uninspired while I wrote this. I had a feeling of wanting to write something, but I couldn't think about what to write. And I've been watching a lot of Kenneth Coke's lectures on YouTube, and he was talking about just kind of sitting down and writing, just writing without thinking too much about formal structure and tone. And so I sat down and just wrote something. And I've been trying to apply that now to more of the things that I write, because I think it's a much more relaxing way to write and almost cathartic in a sense.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll stand on this side. So now we'll invite Nicholas to read his poem, but first let me read his bio. So Nicholas, pronounced he or him, works in a hospital by day and by night. He is a member of the literary collective Zero Sleep. Some of his works have appeared in quarterly literary review Singapore, Eunoia Review, Contour, and the Poetry Festival Singapore, and Anima Metodi, 700 lines from Soul Line Press. Every morning he relearns how to comfort always. Nicholas, please.
Testing. Good evening. Nicholas here. Thank you for having me. Okay. And my poem is titled Come Morning. Content warning, drowning. Waking up is rising for air, salt water in my throat. Every wound is a memory open for viewing, for time to rinse into its depths. In the background, the breaking of skin. If pain progresses to a familiar itch, will it speed up its decay? If I become the ache filling my bones, how then should I remain? Every wound leads into an ocean. Its depths are beyond sight. So hit me with the force of salt water into lungs. Let the ache take hold with each attempt. Let my breath reach again.
Wow. You managed to make the experience of pain sound so elegant. I love the line, every wound leads into an ocean, especially. If you don't mind sharing, what was this significant pain that you were writing about?
I think this poem came from a chat I was having with my friends sometime last year. So what they were telling me was that it's like living feels like drowning, and I was trying to understand why. So it's a lead up into like existential pain. It's like having a wound or an injury that doesn't heal properly, and living with that injury. And now imagine the injury is coming from inside you.
Okay, well, that was philosophical. Yeah. Thanks for sharing with us your poem. Thank you, Nicholas. Hope you enjoyed the lineup so far. Yeah. So can I invite now our third poet, Jonathan, up? Yeah. So Jonathan Chan is a writer and editor of poems and essays. Born in New York to a Malaysian father and South Korean mother, he was raised in Singapore and educated at Cambridge and Yale universities. He's interested in questions of faith, identity, and creative expression. He has recently been moved by the work of Lucille Clifton, Christian women, I hope I got it right, and Wong Mei. More of his writing can be found at the website that you see there. And I would also like to add to his bio that he has a debut poetry collection, Going Home, that was recently published by Landmark Books. Yeah. Jonathan, please go ahead.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much, Kianse, for the kind introduction and the plug. And very happy to be here with all of you this evening. Grateful for the opportunity to share this space with all of you and with all these wonderful fellow writers and poets. So my poem is entitled Mangrove. Mangrove, after R.S. Thomas. The coastlands hope for me, and for my arm they wait. Isaiah 51, verse 5. Lord, cross the eternal ocean with me. Aaron Lee. Was it like a church to me? Sun breaking on skin, crumble no closer to a weak Eucharist, spray crystallizing as salt. What promises has the ocean broken? Tissue has turned to blockage, pelagic visions their own novelty. The idea foldable, this flowing water, husk dragged from sand, hips trembling to stay afloat. The slice of a paddle is an act of faith. Waves cresting, shoulders sore, skin reddening between palm and thumb, the boats turn perpendicular. Blue barrel and green dinghy. Open water sloshes to silt, feet soft in shallowing pools, roots erupt spindly and harsh, forearms burn from every rut. A beach gasps, glancing a metal border, sand scarred by styrofoam. The water flows back. Bodies bend for every bridge. Returning to the river, trees aloft like a green cathedral. Each breath demands the god of mangrove, swamp, and sea. Arms stretch for a moistened eye, fair winds, high tide. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Jonathan. Other than the very beautiful language, I really like the waves effect that I think is very deliberate in the ship poem. I can see the pondering of faith in the content. And are you able to share with us why you chose the mangrove as the central metaphor of this poem and the title? Yeah.
Sure, thanks for the question. It was interesting. So I went kayaking with some friends to Pulau Ubin on a Sunday, and it had me thinking about this idea that kayaking could be a pious act, or that the mangrove could be a sacred space in a way. And, when I was trying to stay afloat on the kayak, trying not to capsize, there are a lot of these questions that were just turning and turning in my head, because there are many, writing traditions that involve a kind of romanticizing of landscapes. But the mangrove is not often featured in a lot of these romanticized depictions. People think of them as humid and hot, and they're kind of grotesque because they're not quite land and they're not quite sea. They're in this weird in-between space. And part of what I was trying to do with the poem was to try and think of it through this lens of beauty, which is also tied to this suffusing of transcendent feeling when I was in the mangrove on that Sunday kayaking. And so it all kind of found its way into this poem.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Just curious, is this in your book by any chance, or is it a separate submission?
Separate submission, but now it's in the book of Catharsis 2022. So I'm very grateful that it's here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would like to invite another poet now, and already with a book under her belt, Aaliya. Yeah. So Aaliya Syeda, right, is a 17-year-old poet who began writing poetry at the tender age of 8. She has since published her first collection of poems entitled Random Stars, and is currently writing her second one dedicated to her grandfather. She's passionate about raising awareness for dementia and working towards the creation of a dementia-friendly space together. In her free time, she also loves to paint and create art. Aaliya, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Aaliya, and my poem is called My Invisible Hijab. I wear the invisible hijab for now. Don't mistake my hair as a symbol of skepticism. They're not all strands of doubt. Don't question my braids. Don't humiliate my beach waves. They're not all tresses of defiance. Know one day I'll replace them anyway, with fabric like satin and chiffon. I wear the abstract hijab for now. It is my unembodied faith I hold dearly to my heart, which I'm tired of proving the existence of, day and day again. You ask me if I ever will allow the invisibility of my hijab to fade, for the conspicuous colors and tangible textures of cloth to emerge instead. If my black braided locks will ever embody the abstract nature of the hijab I now wear, for it to become nothing more or nothing less than a phantom in your head, the answer is yes. I will wear the hijab with good grace one day. I will wear it like that little girl over there, who wears her faith on her long sleeves on a hot midsummer day, while out playing on the field, with her brothers in shorts and half sleeves, hair that can taste the wind and skin that can feast on the breeze. But right now, my invisible hijab is not a metaphor for you to overanalyze and misinterpret as fear. It is not an evasion from what you perceive as the stamp of oppression. So don't misread my lips when I mouth the word Muslim for disbeliever, simply because I am still in the process of achieving the result that little girl wears on her head. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaliya. Yeah, I really appreciate the angle of examining faith. So I purposely lined up yours after Jonathan's, because there's a very different angle, and your frustration and indignation were so palpable in the poem. How do you find catharsis for something that I believe happens possibly frequently?
Well, for me, finding catharsis is quite a personal journey, and it starts with writing about it and ends with acceptance. And as you said, this does in fact happen quite frequently, and often I find myself in between two extremes, where on one end, society wants me to conform and become who I'm supposed to be, and on the other end, they want me to reject it completely, because the concept of a hijab is so misunderstood in our world today. And for someone like me who hasn't worn it yet, it's either that I have to justify why I'm not wearing it right now, or why I do want to wear it in the future. And it takes a lot of moral strength to constantly have to do that. But it gets easier when you know what you want in your heart. And personally, I know my faith, and I know that my direction has not changed. It's just that my path towards it has simply stretched longer. So despite these societal pressures, I think knowing that and accepting it is sort of what completes my cathartic process. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's an amazingly mature poem, as well as an answer from Aaliya. Next, we have poet number 5, Isabelle, to read us her poem. So, Isabelle is currently a Year 3 English Literature and Art History undergraduate at NTU. She has participated in the 2018 and 2019 Catharsis readings before. An aspiring poet who loves cats, crystals, and tea lattes, she also enjoys tutoring and is passionate about educating students. Anything floral and artsy will definitely catch her eye. Themes that she frequently writes about are feminism, mental illness, and environmentalism. Her many poetry pieces can be found at the handle that you see there on Instagram. That makes you the most experienced out of all of us here. Yeah, Isabelle, please.
Hi, thank you so much. Okay, I'm actually very nervous, even though I'm not the most experienced, but okay. Here's my poem. It's titled Pull Up Your Socks. Is the volume okay for everyone? Okay, thank you. In my mind, I see salt test papers immersed in water. They are nothing but art swirls of Rorschach tests, ink blots reminiscent of ladybugs. Now sitting in the exam hall, hand glue pen, eyes glue paper, shuddering, questioning the stability of the chair, and how can it support this tiresome weight? this loathsome freight as I am transported to obliviousness. The state of blankness besets me, blinding, unwinding, limbs like sparse noodles, DNA helicase, hell around my waist, suffocating, twist, and ice-cold pulsations. The dread steps icicles, pressure steaming 150 degrees Celsius, nickel catalyst react. Here's your result. Pull up your socks. These thigh-high socks, the hurriedly knitted fabric grazing my thighs like wire gauze, stretch thinly. Pull up your socks. Does any amount of effort invested matter? I am trying. Pull up your socks. I pull them up until they cut like shards into my thighs. I pull them up until my fingers snap off my joints. I pull them, I pull them, I pull them, I pull them until I pull myself apart.
Thank you. That was a very emotional reading, and I think your poem very likely resonates with every one of us who have needed to sit for an exam before, which is basically all of us. Yeah. Is this written from personal experience, and more importantly, has anything changed now that you have gone to university?
Yes, actually it's written from personal experience when I was studying in JC. So I couldn't really decide on the subject combination which I wanted to decide on, because it's like also confusing and all. And then, with people saying, oh, like if you take the science combination, it'll give you better job prospects. And I always felt like I was a humanities student. I felt like I was better in the arts. So, but at the same time, I really enjoyed biology. So there was this, it was this weird requirement in my JC whereby you have to take biology with chemistry. And I absolutely hated chemistry. Like looking at the organic chemistry, you have to draw the diagrams and all. That's like, it was just so, such, it was just disgusting, honestly. So I don't know what else to describe it. So, sorry. Yeah, so honestly, after I graduated from my JC, and now that I have the freedom to choose my course, which is English Lit and Art History, alongside with the support of my parents, which I'm really thankful for. Where are they? I can't find it. Yay! Thank you. Yeah, and with my one classmate here as well. Also, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, and I feel like a lot has really changed back then. Now that I'm able to embrace the humanities a lot more and find comfort in what I love the most. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a bio up there, but just for information, I'm a chemistry teacher. Teaching the subject that she finds disgusting, but I'm not offended. To each her own. Yeah, I'm glad that she really found what she really loves doing. Yeah. So I'd like to welcome another young lady, Natalie, to share her poem with us. Yeah. Natalie is a year 6 at ACS Independent, who enjoys all things humanities. Inspired both by the writers around her and the need to show that her occasional moping around can also be productive, she started writing more consciously over the last year. Not knowing whether the pen or the sword is mightier, Natalie seeks catharsis from writing and fencing, and occupies herself with Model United Nations, emceeing, journalism, and wondering why her chive seeds never seem to sprout. New to the whole poetry thing, she has previously performed a reading for Write and Burn 2022 just this year. Natalie, please.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hello everyone, I'm Natalie, and this is my poem, Blue and Birds, and it's dedicated to an old friend of mine. Blue and Birds. Sisyphus and his boulder, a tale for the time gone. Between you and me, I found you when I was crawling up a ramp. As I make a desperate plea, I form my hands into a prayer for mahogany. Splinters aplenty, sprinters frenzy. You look at me as if I was a golden-winged dove. mouth unhinged, olive green smirk. If you told me I was happy, I would have believed you. I thought you were very beautiful, so I didn't know what to do with my hands. Maybe I cut them and put them back on the wrong way so that you'd take them and make things right. The birds still laugh, and I can't chase them away because these aren't mine. The aftermath of love means none of us can take it anymore. This desire swelling into more birds, more trees, more birds on trees. I'm asking you to stay. Leave migrating for another day. You have many places to be. Right here next to me would be a nice start. But I throw myself into a washing machine of green moss with a tablespoon of salt, exfoliating the tears away, salt upon more salt. But the memories remain, this dream where you're looking at me and laughing and smiling, and all was good with the world. It'd be a dream where I tell you from the view from the stage, a friend I made who looked like you. And I joked that he would replace you because there's limited space in a heart. And you'd laugh and know that it was a joke, and that I'd never replace you. I would be a happy dream of sunlight flittering through tree leaves, my sunflowers sprouting for you, and all the wonderful things you are to me. I'd tell you that you were something I've wanted for a very long time. My prayers no longer an afterthought of hope. How when the washing machine breaks and moss streams between my lashes and fingers, salt against wound, heart against head, and switched hands. I take a knee. The green too much to bear, too many things in the wrong places. My heart in a blender or in a bender, like suddenly there are only two primary colors, red and yellow. I've lost the blue from the sea, and yet the moss doesn't fade. It doesn't get any easier to pretend that all I needed was this. That I was all right, guilt and the gutter mixing into some odd shade of puke. Tinted gold, still gross. I just wanted to see blue again. In a dream I had, you sit right by me with a duck on your lap. We're smiling and crying as if we had found the last truth. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed the richness in the poem where it comes to visual and tactile descriptions, and how there is a stanza that is prose, which is a very interesting break in the middle. Can you share with us where you drew all this vivid imagery from?
Right, sure. So I think of this in two ways, making myself use these images and the specific images I choose. So as a personal experiment, I like to test the boundaries of images. What can I make out of a washing machine? What do birds mean? How much can I talk about plants before my friends shut me up, right? So how much can we take something from our daily lives and make it something beautiful? Or does that transformation really need to happen before mundane things become meaningful? That's my experimentation with images, the make myself use part. For the what images I use, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I've been into the quotidian lately, so the home life. As a friend would say, into the domestics, right? So in such stressful times, how do we find catharsis? My inevitable interest is the exploration of the quotidian as a comfort from the harsh vicissitudes of life. And I hope that through my images, I've created a common shared understanding of peace and comfort for everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A very thoughtful answer. Next up, we have another Year 6 student with us. Claudia? Yeah. Oh, I hear a lot of supporters too. That's great. Claudia Chen is currently a Year 6 OTA student doing film, but spent her first 4 years in literary arts. Of everything she has written, fiction, non-fiction, poems, scripts, and essays, Claudia remains inclined to poetry after realizing that words didn't have to be in neat stanzas all the time. Her poetry has been published in 2 school-based anthologies and in issue 2 of Amber, the teenage chapbook. Outside of writing, Claudia loves to read. Okay, I do not know how to pronounce this. Maybe you can help me. Yeah. Okay. Non-fiction books. I'm so sorry. Ming desserts, play the guitar, and go down history-related rabbit holes on Wikipedia. Claudia, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm Claudia, and this is my poem titled 29, Until We're a Lifetime Away. You sit down to dinner, and life, as you know it, ends. Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. My mother, who toiled throughout her life, whose hands never knew what rest was, who would cry while surrendering life's woes to fate, small and frail and immobile on this hospital bed. On this hospital bed that's ferrying her to a realm beyond my knowledge, drifting further away from this shore I'm on. 5 minutes before I was left here for good, she had a pulse of 29 heartbeats per minute, a heartbeat almost every 2 seconds. The seconds stretched out between one heartbeat and the next, and then the next, until I watched the seconds stretch across her last breath and fall into a bottomless pit, a lifetime away. In that instant, did I stop being someone's daughter? The certainty in the divide between light and dark, but did shadows creep into the light before the fairy departed for good? In the days, weeks, and months that set the scene for today, when cataracts and confusion clouded the clarity and made her forget who I was. In the 300 seconds it took for my mother to reach the end, I still believed in a tomorrow for her, storing hope in a new bottle of apple juice that didn't have tomorrow's cup to be poured into. My mother, who surrendered life to fate, whose worn-out hands might finally learn what rest is, who sleeps in peace forever now. A heartbeat every 2 seconds for 5 more minutes. A final breath before the ferry sailed out of sight from this shore, from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for a very moving poem. The tension in the poem was very visceral to me when I read it. I like the use of time and timing that you use to convey the sense of urgency. And if it's okay with you, are you able to tell us more about the circumstances behind the poem?
Sure. So just to preface this, my mom is not dead. This is in loving memory of my grandmother. She passed away in early this year in April, and hearing my mom recall the moments leading up to my grandma's death really stuck with me. At the same time, I was writing an essay on the grieving process in Joan Didion's book, The Year of Magical Thinking. And as a result, this poem was written as an attempt for me to sort of piece together everything I've learned and experienced to somewhat have a better understanding of grief. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for your loss. Our eighth poet is someone who needs to work with words a lot in her profession. Elizabeth Fong is a lawyer by profession and a poet by craft. She believes that poetry is the most honest filter through which the world around her is parsed and interpreted, and is a member of the poetry collective Zero Sleep. She also has a pet Maltese poodle mix named Gorbachev and seeks to work him into as many of her poems as she possibly can. Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My poem is called Your Number is Now a Thai Restaurant's Number. We were so happy together, I think, because we were eating all the time. Rice, curry, bottles and bottles of wine, and Aperol before every meal. Your dimples were so deep by the end, perfect divots for catching your laugh. 2 weeks before you died, we went to Phuket and ate our way through our holiday. I dared not take any photographs of me in my swimsuit because you must have drunk more Chang than water. And on our last night, we sat by the roadside, picking at pad thai with a single pair of chopsticks. Here, take more shrimp. An extra serving of morning glory. And I can still hear your laugh, caught fast in your dimples. Deep dimples. Are you eating well where you are? Order me whatever keeps you warm in the monsoon months. Order me a glass of Chang. I still have a ways to go.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I do not see Gorbachev worked into this poem, though.
You do not. This was pre-Gorbachev.
Yeah. Yeah, the almost matter-of-fact way you describe the death and passing of someone very dear to you hits me very hard in the gut. How do you find your personal catharsis through such a painful experience?
Well, I guess it's because, so on every year, on the anniversary of the death of this person, I write him a poem. And over the years, the poem has changed, and this was the most recent one that I wrote. And it was after I had fallen in love with somebody else. And I guess it's just a lesson in that life moves and grief changes. And the way you love somebody changes. So that is my own catharsis. My fiancé is here today. Love you very much. But yeah, I wrote this poem, and this was my catharsis in figuring out how your feelings fall after a long time away.
Thank you. Congratulations to both of you, because I know they're about to get married soon. Yeah. The next poet, Sarah, is unable to join us today, unfortunately, as she has just contracted COVID. Nonetheless, let me introduce her, and she has recorded a reading of a poem, and as well as a response to the question that I was going to ask her, so you can hear that later on. So Sarah Mark is a Singaporean writer and a member of Singlish Station's writing collective Zero Sleep as well. Currently, she is studying communication studies at Nanyang Technological University, writing poetry and code, or learning to sleep. So she did a recording, like I said, of a poem. So I'll have to get the tech people to help play this. Fingers crossed that it works.
So this poem is inspired by, hi everyone, I have the plague, so I'm recording this from home. So this poem is called, I Wish I Did Not Live in a House of Water. Today my father plugged into a soggy socket and set electricity flowing through the walls, causing a power trip that wiped my computer's work. More water is creeping through the concrete. I saw beads of light gathering above me, threatening to fall like swords. At dinner, a drop of water did drip into a pan and sizzled against the hot rim. My father and I said nothing. Though we can reach out to fill our cups with dripping water, we shouldn't waste our spit. Now I see a patch of dirty grey spreading out of a crack. One day, the walls will be so waterlogged, we will punch through them like paper. Hi everyone, I have the plague.
Yes, very apt repetition of that statement. Yeah, I posted a couple of questions in advance regarding a poem. I asked her what was the inspiration behind this poem and whether there was an actual water leak in the house. Yeah, so maybe you'll take a listen to a response.
So this poem is inspired by a very real event. My house had a water leakage problem, and when my father switched on one of the sockets, it did cause a power trip that wiped my computer's work. So I used that as a metaphor to talk about our relationship and how difficult it can be to reach out to a loved one when there's been a lot of tension for a long time. So this poem is inspired.
Thank you. So next up, I think our next poet should be the youngest in the whole lineup, Arissa. Yeah. With very loud supporters too. That's great. Yeah. Arissa is a year 4 student at Raffles Girls' School, passionate in expressing herself through creative writing. She first realized that poetry was her first love after being introduced to Singlit poems for a literature class in year 2. She even embarked on a Singlit research project for the Humanities and Social Sciences Research Program, HSSRP. In 2020, she attained first place in the National Poetry Competition for the category that's 10 to 14 years old. Beyond Singlit, she loves the works of Ocean Vuong and Zadie Smith. She is also proud to call herself a Swiftie and personally believes that the Evermore album is superior to the Folklore album. Yeah, Arissa, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Arissa, and today I'll be presenting my poem called Continuum. I fidget with red strings that loop into years of expired time. Who decides where it starts and ends? Lie still then. The earth can translate my thoughts into tremors. Wounds will fester, and I'll wait until strings stain and strain and your pedestal breaks. You have taught me the truth. The heart breaks down like an MRT line. Will I ever reach the loop leading back to you? I bleed until warned of doors closing in time for my vessels to recoil, static. My thoughts, charged pylons crackling. The current never ends, does it? My feet will want to tread the ends again. Lanes and pavements incised with the breaks we skipped over on the way home. My thoughts never lapse into silence, not with you. I loop my shoelaces up, down, not around. You chiding each time. Aaliya, how have you not learned until now? But do you recall jiving like dancing queens until we began flying? I held onto your hand because the ends of corridors were as dizzy as a daydream. Eventually, time would trickle into Neverland. Those after-school breaks, a timeless acoustic, ever so gentle on the loop of your guitar. Who else could turn my thoughts incandescent? But you. You inhabit the thoughts of my Monday mornings, running to recess until we made it to the front loop of the canteen queue. I'd hurry the ends of your orders, then tug and twist till your tie breaks its knot and a plate drops, and I'm sorry, but time is ticking. And don't you waste our time. We haven't much left. Tether my thoughts to train tracks, please. The MRT line breaks through downtown tunnels so dark until we run through the wrong stations, splicing together the ends of north, south, east, west. Electricity lingers long on the loop. The closed loop of loving, frayed with time. Is this how the story ends? Only now, my thoughts, short circuit, forget everything until the last string breaks.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely performance of the poem. When I was reading, I was very impressed because I always appreciate a good sestina when it's written in a way that you can't quite tell it's a sestina until much further in. Yeah, and I like the wonderful use of the repetitious nature of a sestina to run this common thread throughout the poem. And it's quite unusual to see use of spaces as well. Just want to know, why do you choose this very effortful form of a sestina?
Okay, I think that the sestina was really a form that managed to create an additional layer of meaning to the poem, because like with the sestina, there's a sense of pattern and rhythm that really emphasizes this cyclical process of letting go of memory and love. And that's really what I wanted to flesh out with my poem. And other than that, I think that it really speaks to overthinkers when you think about how they try to navigate and question a lot of like thoughts and emotions, and you see that very clearly through the pattern that comes with like the sestina. Since like for those of you who don't know what a sestina is, basically it's a very distinct structure of poem where the endings of each poem are repeated in every stanza, but in like a set rotation. So I think that really creates a lot of loops in the poem and creates like a palpable tension between the pushes and pulls of emotions that come with the piece. And so really at the end of the poem, when you read the envoy, which is like the last 3 lines, which I tried to change with this spacing between, it creates that sense of catharsis where you really see a change from the previous disarray of the other stanzas.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very curious about the whole thinking process behind this. Yeah, for the next poet, Dawn, he's unfortunately unable to join us this evening due to work commitments that sprang up last minute. He's actually very nearby, floating on a platform. Yeah, fortunately, it was not that last minute, so he managed to make some alternative plans. So I managed to get him to also do a recording of his reading. So, but let me introduce him first. Born and based in Singapore, Don began writing poetry as a teenager in the 1990s. After a 20-year hiatus exploring other art forms, Don returned to poetry in 2019 through participating in Singapore Poetry Writing Month, Singapore Rimo. He has since had poems published in Atelier of Healing, as well as Singapore Rimo's online magazine. By day, Don is a public relations professional, creating and telling stories in other ways. Now, let's have a listen to the reading he recorded.
Hi everyone, I'm sorry I can't be with you this evening for Catharsis. At this very moment, I'm at the float at Marina Bay doing some behind the scenes work for the National Day Parade preview show. Nevertheless, I'm glad and honoured that I'm still able to share this poem of mine with you. First weeks of separation. Some nights I slip and laugh like you're still here. The show I'm watching freezes. Walls warp and recede. Memory, as if it has memory of its own, rises like a cold fist in my throat saying, "Why did you let this end?" Inside jokes, ingrown habits, high-rise hopes, intimacy inimitable, every beat once unforgettable, now all glitching out. Some nights, the world in which I did not ask for divorce bleeds into this one. I find you in the next room, swaying to a music I do not hear. I approach you gingerly, lacing ghost fingers, as if all we planned could still be. We say nothing, there is warmth left over to believe. I stay long enough to enjoy it. Go before it cools to ache. I wake in a house of absent futures. Day throws light in every corner where something will now never happen. I feel every ounce of this to know what I have chosen. I stare down our blank walls till they are no longer blank, just walls. I tame this reflux of affection. In time, absent pain will overtake absent joy. I will curl in a new bed with a book so deep I forget to count its pages. Thank you.
Can you pause first? Yeah, so hearing how he performed his poem, you might think that he's there as a performer, but no, he's doing logistics. Yeah, so I also gave him a question to ponder over, which is for something so painful, did writing this bring you catharsis? Yeah, so listen to his response. Yeah.
That's a great question, Kense. Thanks for asking. This was a difficult thing to write about, but I find that the beauty of poetry is that it helps us to externalize our feelings as we make sense of the world. So having externalized a thought as a poem, you can do whatever you want with it. If it's positive, preserve it. If it's negative, put it aside or share it to help people understand and bring others into the moment with you so you are less alone. Well, that's it. Thanks, and have a great evening, everyone.
Performer to the end, right? Yeah. Next up, we'll have Christian with us to read his poem for us. His impressive bio reads as such. Christian graduated with a BA in law from Cambridge. His work has been published in, or is forthcoming in the Maze, Anthropocene, Rusted Radishes, Gaudy Boy, New Singapore Poetries, Quarterly Literary Review Singapore, Bad Betty Press, the Book of Bad Bettys, Ecstasis Magazine, the Tiger Moth Review, Given Grace, the Templeman Review, and the JFA Human Rights Journal, among others. He won the Arthur Sale Poetry Prize, was runner-up for the Ariyamati Poetry Prize, and has been shortlisted for the Britpert Port Prize, the Skies Prize, and the Cups Poetry and Prose Prize. So many prizes. His work has been performed at Manchester and Singapore Poetry Festivals. Christian, please.
Sorry, I didn't know the bios would be read. Tenderness as Ars Poetica. On mornings where I find it difficult to live, I cannot tell you where I end and the coastline of my mind begins. My bed, my cleft, my fetal rest, my chest abrim with tangled odors and shifty, scrappy, sharp tank salesmen, who upon hearing I'm once again out of my mind, scavenge for clues as to the unraveling. Believing, perhaps rightly, that should they take a microscope to my hours, staring at my hands in the bath, willing them to prune and thus fall off already dead, they would find the loose thread at the beginning of everything. I tell my love they are looking for proof. Proof, she says gently, for now she is still my love. Proof, I scream, because I am still shamed, not ashamed. I've outgrown that and thus become it. For they know I will shrink into the shape of my plants whose name begin with the shattering of light and so desist. My mother breaks my heart, but I forgive her, because I did it first and learned to apologize and did it again. I write about refugees and feel only shame. I write about myself and feel only shame. I write about the coal and have to Google the coal, like how I first Googled what I secretly thought of in the language of fundamental design flaws. Felt my heart drop like a stone, embarrassed at leaving the door open to this sort of disease, these afflictions. My rule for evidence is we need proof for specific situations, such as the poet once again documenting building heights, the poet thinking he might be good enough, the poet's sickness spreading in the body like a kind of spilt egg, white dribbling over the side into some darkness we cannot see. I'm just turning the page. On days when I'm lost to the dribbling, my love, for now she is still my love, reminds me that tomorrow, that elusive bastard will worry about himself. It is enough simply to still be alive and possible in this fragile world of measurable pain. A list of things needed like air. Vintage cargo pants, telling people you love them, even if they cannot love you back. My body, not the sun, sometimes dreams of endeavor, apologies to everyone I've loved. It is a serious thing being possible. It is a serious thing making it to this point in this particular poem. In the mornings, I spy my love watering the plants despite their dying. I tell her it is a metaphor. She smacks the top side of my head and asks, is that a metaphor? Not much is right, but for now, this is one of them. Elbows touching, we watch the dying thyme playing in the light, starting to tumble onto our kitchen garden, and are giddy with grief, giddy with joy, giddy with silly little life boys, like the brave and taken belief that the leaves will straighten out again tomorrow, as if daring the winter to rob them of their will to survive. Thanks.
Thank you. I love the presentation of the poem, both on page as well as what's shown on the slides, and definitely the reading. There's so much to unpack in this long poem. What was exactly going through your mind or your life when you wrote this?
So obviously this is like a breakup poem. What was going through my life? I was reading Mahmoud Darwish, who's a Palestinian poet. I was also reading Christian Wyman's Hammers the Prayer, I think. So I was thinking a lot about like movement and rhythm. I was thinking a lot about aestheticizing things in a very specific way. That's from Darwish. It's very like sort of naturalistic kind of direction. And also like they're both also incredibly snarky, but also incredibly tender. And so that's why I was thinking about tenderness. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And to round off the lineup, we have Skylar here with us. Skylar Yap is a Singaporean artist, poet, a friendly neighborhood rat who dabbles in every medium they can get their hands on. Their works have been featured in various anthologies and projects since 2020. Their muses include their writing collective Zero Sleep, Bottleless Angst, and a cesspool of lived experiences. Find them online at skylar.yap. Yeah. Skylar, please.
Hello. Okay, mic test. Okay. Pardon the lack of eye contact. I'm a filthy page poet. I don't read a lot. Okay. Content warning, suicide. I have died before. When I was 12, my mother asked if I wanted my favorite stuffed animal buried with me or left for her as a memento. That was when I learned that I had already died, a husk left behind in the wake of a suicide note that she had to feed and bathe and drive to the psychiatrist. I do not blame her for mourning early. I too have attended my funeral one too many times that I am sick of my widowed lover sobbing. It is his fault for not attending the rehearsals in my head. But I do not blame him for mourning late, for he is the only one who views me as alive. He is in denial as he continues to feed and bathe and drive me to the psychiatrist. I write many suicide notes, often folded in library books, immortalizing cryptic mementos of myself to be scattered across space-time like ashes, else I would forget to mourn myself. I am no longer alive. My lover begs me to stop holding funerals. My mother continues to attend them.
Thank you, Skylar. This poem hits me right in the guts. Heavy stuff here. Just wanted to ask you, has writing this actually changed anything for you, emotionally or anything else?
Well, you might say it was a little bit cathartic. But I think writing in general, at least for me, writing poetry is for catharsis, and it's for recording down. It's like taking a photo, right? But sometimes when you write or when you take a photo, you don't capture everything. You don't capture the experience, you don't capture the feelings. And that's what poetry can do. So when you look back on poems like these, this was written last year, the year before? I cannot for the life of me remember. But yeah, and you see your growth, you see what has changed. I am obviously not yet buried in the ground. I have Mousy, who is also not yet buried in the ground, nor given to my mother as a memento. He's here. Good boy. And yeah, I think poetry is cathartic, at least for me, and possibly for everyone here who came to an event called Catharsis.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I resonate very much with what she just said about the fact that a poem is like a snapshot of including emotions and everything else. So we actually come to the end of Catharsis 2022. I know that on paper it says until 8 p.m., but I was told that there might be some overshooting of the previous event and so on, so I planned with some buffer, and apparently, as a teacher often does, I over-buffered. So I hope the selection of poems, though, has given you a certain peace, and may you find your own catharsis. Then you can send in your poems too next year. Take care and keep well, everyone, and thanks for being a fabulous audience. Since we have some time left, please feel free to chit-chat with any of us around, especially those who came to support your friends and family. Thank you, everyone, and good night.